arguments so that the argument can be the word that you want formatted in that particular way. So I encourage you, if you find yourself doing a lot of like little nitpicky font adjustments, to ask yourself whether or not that would be better done in a macro to just clean up the body of your text. Oh, and then also consider using an environment if you're trying to change the font specifications for a section of text. It's a lot better than trying to do a curly brace on one line and then another curly brace 7 lines later. Same thing for justification, really. For both justification and font styling, it's best to use these things sparingly. If you do need to use a justification command, it's a good idea to think about nesting it within an environment, because then it automatically ends when the environment ends. See here, I have a list environment. I have ragged left. I want the list to be on the left-hand side of the document. And that ragged left will terminate when itemized terminates. But also you can use these as an environment. Flush left and flush right as an environment. I think I mentioned that a few seconds ago. Special characters, there's actually a lot better and much more nicely typesetted version of this in your folder under in the cheat sheet file. But these are just a few special characters that you might need to use. It's difficult. Well, when you're formatting LaTeX, you're not just going to write with some umlauts. I don't know if those are umlauts, but you're not just going to write copy and paste that. You're going to actually use a command to create the special character. And it's a lot more consistent, a lot nicer way to do special characters, I think, in the end than what Word affords or something else like that. So those are just a few examples of commands. Again, I would encourage you to look at that cheat sheet document. It has more special characters, and the typesetting of how to do the special characters is a lot nicer. I didn't figure out how to do that for this presentation. Okay, forced breaks. Again, another thing to just be aware of, but I'm not gonna, maybe you want to type some of these things into your main document while I'm talking, but if not, it's not a big deal. I went over a forced break of a line break. That's just 2 backslashes. That technically means it's a line break without being a new paragraph. And that can be very useful. I use it frequently. Another useful command for forcing a break is new page and clear page. They do pretty much what you'd think. One of them clears the rest of the page below it and continues the text on a subsequent page. And another one takes the subsequent material and puts it on a new page. So play around with those if you like. Par just means this is a paragraph. If you want something to be indented, then you use indent. If you want something not to be indented, a new paragraph not to be indented, you can do no indent. There's a way to, if you don't want any of your paragraphs to be indented and instead you want a line space, there's a way to specify that in your preamble. Don't just write new indent like a million times. Go back to your preamble and change the settings. If you have a long word that you don't want hyphenated, one way to do that is to wrap it in this mbox command. So that can be useful sometimes for certain things. Okay. Yeah, so I have about 10 minutes. Do people, I guess I'll just ask, would you like me to do, so cross-referencing is just doing hyperlinks or automatic referencing to different parts of your document. I could go over that. It can be useful for things like tables, or I could get into the table environment, or I could do equations. What would be most useful for people? I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more things. What should I do next? Person who has a preference can have their preference. So what do we have? We have equations, hyperreferences, some stuff on environments. This is where we can talk about making a table. Here's a table environment for wrapping around a table. A figure environment for figures. Any preferences? If not, then I'll just do what I think is coolest, I guess. Nothing? All right. Oh, somebody put something in. Okay. So just be aware that I have stuff on cross-referencing here. It's really useful, especially like for a table or something like that, because it will automatically take the number of the table that you're referencing and plop it into your text for you. So you'll no longer have to like edit your documents and make sure that after you renumbered your tables, you have the right table referenced in your document. LaTeX will do that for you programmatically. So this is a like incredibly useful thing, and it's here in this slide, and it's in your minimum working example, the MWE file. Hyperreferences, this is really not very complicated at all. The href or the hyperref package does this. You can format them in pretty much whatever way you want. And with the href command, you can like embed a link in some text, like I've done there with the HackMD page associated with this tutorial. So what I think we should talk about is equations, because this is another thing that people typically use LaTeX for, and many people consider it a sufficient reason to use LaTeX in itself. Particularly if you're in a math-heavy discipline. Math-heavy disciplines tend to use LaTeX more often, like economics and certain types of psychology and mathematics, computer science, and so on and so forth. There's lots of different mathematical symbols. There's no point in me trying to educate you on all of them. But you can go to these resources to find some lists of symbols that are really useful. There's 3 different ways to start a math mode environment. This first way here, you'll see it very commonly, but it's more or less deprecated. It won't be maintained in LaTeX 3, so I wouldn't use that just as a standard practice. I would use this type, so the backslash square brace backslash square brace here. That's what do they call it? Presentation equation. I don't think that's the term they use, but it's an equation that gets typeset in the middle of the page automatically. This is an inline equation. It's an equation that will be typeset in line with the rest of what you're writing. So just remember, the square braces will bump the equation off and put it in the center automatically. You can also use an equation environment. And sometimes for readability purposes, that can be much preferable to the brackets approach. I recommend you just use the AMS math package. A lot of this stuff will work by and large in base LaTeX without invoking any packages, but AMS math gives you a lot of functionality, and some of the functionality I show you will be dependent on that package. So here's an example. Don't feel like you need to write all this. It's in the MWE file for you to look at and play with later. So you have to invoke the package. And then here's just a sampling of what this kind of special character is available in math mode. Note how this is an inline environment, math environment. Here's another example of an inline math environment that I'm using. This is a fraction. Fractions have 2 required arguments, the numerator and the denominator. So put the numerator and the denominator there. a multiplication sign isn't an X because an X will be read as a character, like an algebraic character. So you need to use times, which actually is typesetted differently than X, as you probably know. And that goes for all of the symbols, really, in a math equation. So just here's an example of the environment. A nice thing about the environment is that you can use a label, which I didn't show you, but this is a way to refer back to that equation. So if you want to say in equation 1, then you would use a reference and use this key to refer back to equation 1, which is really nice to be able to do. Align is something that the AMS math package affords. And it lines, if you use these ampersands, it will line up these equations so that the equal sign is all in the same, typesetted in the same place. Again, really useful thing. As you know now, these two backslashes just mean new line. That's not a new paragraph. And that's necessary for the align package. By the way, this looks a lot like a table. And that's because the align environment is a different type of table environment or tabular environment. Okay, I have 4 minutes. I have some stuff on different environments. We talked about lists. This is like all of the different types of lists nested within one list. So just an example for you. I'm just gonna briefly mention, this is how I made that table. So if you go to the, can't remember what I called it. I think it's just table.tex file. This is all that's in that file that we inputted into our document. It begins in the normal way as a environment begins, and then it has a required argument. And this is the required argument is where you specify how you want it to typeset each column. So here we have 3 columns. One is centered, the first one. This first column here is centered. And then the second 2 columns here and here are left justified. That's what the L means. The pipe, straight up and down line here, means that I want a line between the first and the second columns. So the ampersands are column separators in a table environment, and your double backslashes are row separators in the table environment. The table environment affords different things, like there's other things that are mentioned in the cheat sheet that I provided. H line is one of them that just produces a line. This is essentially a line between the first and second line. And I don't know why, but my convention is to put this here, but you could put it between the first and second rows. And I've typed this out and used blank spaces so that it looks kind of like a table, so that it's readable outside of, but you don't have to typeset it like this at all. It can just be a jumble of like ampersands. As long as you have the right number, then it will typeset. But this is a way to do it that's readable for human beings. And then the last thing I'll mention is that the book tabs package provides a lot of different ways of making your tables look more professional than just a conventional table. And I think Alma asked, how do you change like text within a table? And this is where you would do it. So within a cell, maybe you want this to be large or something like that. You would just use that large command there. Yeah, so I think I'll stop there. I have 1 minute. So thanks for being here. I think maybe if we have a minute, if you have a outstanding question I can help with, I'm happy to. Great. Well, feel free to email me. You have my email. So if you have questions, I'm happy to help you out with it. So, thanks.